Hi, this video, we're going to discuss group policy, the way that it's been applied, and illustrate the concept with the hands-on exercise. So the objectives, the first one is the policy are applied in the order of local policy, site, domain, organization unit, and then the OU policy inside of the OU. Now, we also will illustrate when the system boots up, we have local policy applied for the local computer. And after that, we will have the site policy to apply, override the local policy, and then domain will be applied next. So far, it seems logical. The hierarchy organizational settings has been applied in sequence. And then suddenly the organization unit, which is inside the domain, actually will apply after the domain policy. And then the same reason, the lower level OU inside of an OU is going to apply its policy after the parent OU. And it will override the parent's OU. And we will think, hey, why is it that way? It seems like the OU in a lower level, such as if it's a MONSEC OU, and the CIS OU is inside the MONSEC, but the CIS OU can override MONSEC. And we will explain the details in that. For now, let's just understand this is regarding the delegations. So the whole domain may have a blanket settings. And after that, we will have an organization unit such as business division, science division, and they will have their own settings for the desktop. So then they will override whatever the domain policy. And of course, the domain policy, if the lower domain, such as business division, we didn't set anything up, then of course, the setting from the domain will be still there. And the same reason regarding the delegation, the CIS department may have a specific needs to apply the policy. So the setting of the CIS OU is going to override whatever the business division's settings. And of course, if same reason, if CIS doesn't care about certain settings, then it will take whatever the business division setting and of course, which is also the domains and sites settings. So that's all about delegate the control so that the setting for each department and each subunit, they will have a specific settings that's in effect. And of course, on the top layers of the policy will serve as like a blanket coverage. Okay. Now, the second important thing we need to know is enable settings and also disable setting and the not configure, what it means by that. So it's best to understand and remember that when we click on the enable setting of a policy, that means we want that statement to happen. And likewise, if we say disable the setting, that means we do not want the setting to happen. The reason why I stress on this point is that sometimes the setting it says, I don't want this. If you say, I don't want this, and when you enable, that means you don't want that. And when you disable the I don't want this, that means that will happen. So sometimes it's confusing. So we will later on use the hands-on to illustrate the concept. And of course, when you say not configure, that means you don't care about the settings. So whoever's on the upper layer, they would trickle down to your settings. Unless, of course, when you say you want to block the inheritance, which we again will have detailed hands-on exercise to illustrate the concept. Now, configure and deploy the group policy is what we will do. Discuss the meaning of enable, disable, not configure, which we already did. And also we'll go into detail for using hands-on exercise to illustrate concept. Update the GP deployment to the authenticated user through the group policy update, the GP update. And we will use two different settings to actually illustrate the concept. We'll use the filtering method to undo what we did before, or using just undo whatever the setting options before to set it all back, and it will be on our exercise too. Now, we also will learn delegations to delegate the policy 37 modification rights to the CIS N24 to modify the policy. And then from the DC, we will log on as administrators to configure the group policy of the CIS N24, which will affect all the users inside the OU CIS N24 organization unit. And then the lower policy 37, which is under this policy CIS N24, those policies, they will enjoy overriding the block inheritance to customize the Windows setting for the users inside the OU until the upper OU, such as the CIS N24 or the domain policy, they enforce the policy. Once it's enforced, then everything will be enforced, meaning that you cannot block it. Whatever domain policy says is whatever you're going to get. And of course, if the domain policy or upper OU policy didn't have any settings, then you got to enjoy a specific setting for your sub OU. And it's all about delegations, and it's for the flexibility and also for the efficiency. Okay, so we are going to go into the part one of the exercise to actually illustrate the concept and the objective that we try to achieve. So we're going to move this document to the side, and then you can follow along with the document with the video. First of all, we have to power on both systems here, and then from the DC 2024, we are going to sign on as administrators. And then we're going to locate the CIS N24 OU and verify that the users exist. So we can come here and just look at. And we are going to go through the tools and run the Active Directory users and computers and highlight the OU 37 and make sure that we do see our users exist, so we can actually test it out. Now, it's important for us to make sure that what's the original setting in there. So we are going to go to the workstation, Windows 10, and we're going to sign in. And we're going to click on other users and sign on as CIS the U37-1 or -2 to actually test it out. Password is the same as the username. And now we're going to test it out and make sure the run is working, and then it doesn't show the run as. Okay. And that's documented on your page 2, step number 3. So we are going to right-click and then click on Run, and of course it's working. And then we click here, left-click of course, and then you look at the windows. So under Window Administration Tools, and then any one of them, you just go ahead and say, hey, right-click, and then More, and you can see that the Run as different users is not available. Run as admin is different story. So we can run, right-click and run a program and take a look at More. We do not see run as. That's the default setting of this CIS 37, the U37-1 user. Now we are going to continue on to the server to further set up the policy for it. So this ADUC, we already done with it. Let's just reduce it. And we are going to go to the group policy management. Okay. Right, so let's take a look at group policy management. And we're going to configure the policy 37. And if you take a look at it, we open it up in here and look at the domain. Look at our domain setup in here. You can see that they are being grouped logically. This is the organization unit. So this is OU, CISN 24. And this is OU underneath the OU. And we do have two policies here. Okay. And then if you close it up again here, you can see that the policy object, group policy object is in here. So those are the policy object. And those, see the symbol is different. This is the policy, and this is actually the organization unit. Okay. And by the way, if you wanted to see what's the current policy setting, you can actually highlight the policy here. And then I will go in here and you can look at the settings here. And it will tell you what's been set in here. Computer policy has not been set. User policy is not set. So that already clear that we don't have any pre-existing condition that will affect our exercise. And then if you look at the security filtering or dedications, those are the settings. You can click on the show. And then see its security filtering is to the authenticated users. And those are the settings already in there. So you can actually verify to see what's running there or not. And we can go back in and check it. So now that being said, we continue on to set up the OU37 policy. So we can go to the policy object here. And we will go to the policy 37. And it is actually exists and it linked towards the OU37. Okay, so that's very important so that we can actually enable those two settings and it will affect whoever's inside the OU37. Now we are going to right click and we say we want to edit it. And there's a user policy that we wanted to change, and that's administrative policy there. And let me I can just open it up bigger, easier to see. And then look at this, it's a for the start menu. So if you click that, then you can see and you can click standard, so you can actually easily locate the setting we want. Click on the settings, so it's a sort by the orders, and you can see that we wanted to remove run. So we don't want it to run because by default it can run, and we want to test it out by setting a policy. Say, hey, I want to enable remove run. That means you cannot run anymore. Okay, so when you say remove run, that means run is gone. You cannot work on that. And we're going to say okay. And then the next setting we want to do is actually show run as different users here, and we want to enable it too. Therefore, it's going to show the option to run as different users. And we say, okay on that. Now, after that, we wanted to actually test it out by signing on, which we already did. We signed it on to here. And then remember, we are able to, or we were able to run, it's still able to. And then you can take a look that because the policy haven't actually applied yet, it will take some time for it to trickle down there. So you see that the run as different user is not there yet either. So now we are going to just go to CMD and GP update. So we don't want to wait. Forced. So once it's forced, then it cannot run because we disable the we actually remove run. We enable the remove run, right? So once we enable the removing run, that means we cannot run. So again, after we refresh that and we try to run, you should get an error message here now. you cannot run because the policy says no. Now, how about show run as different users? So let's take a look at it. And you take a look at that and you say, hey, any kind of those element2 or more, and you can see run as different user now. It shows up now. So that means the policy that we just set for the 37 OU actually is working. So now let's move on to page 3, part 2. How do we remove the policy? And you can try it to log in as U37-2, which will produce exactly the same result because they are on the same OU. To save the recording time, I'm not going to demonstrate that. So we are going to, again, go to filtering on the policy lab. So in the filtering lab, what we are going to do is we are going to find the user here and then tell them that you can see that it's a deny. Or the user when they have applied policy and when it's allowed, that means you will receive the policy. But if I denied you, then even though you are inside the OU, you're supposed to receive it. But because this filter, if you are user CS37, the U37-1, if I deny you, then you will no longer receive the policy. So, but user 2, the U37-2 will still receive that. So let's test it out. So we're going to go to the server here, and we're going to leave this alone. And we are going to use the filtering method to disable the U37-1 from receiving this policy. Okay, so we're going to click on the state here and see that, hey, those are the 2. Roll it up and you can see, hey, those 2 are enabled, right? And this is this icon. We are going to just reduce it. And we go back to the GPMC, Group Policy Management in here. And now we are going to actually take a look at the property, and then we're going to look at the delegations. We're going to look at the configuration to actually filter it. So if you look at the delegation, and then I click on the advanced, then you will see the security got popped up here. There's other way to access it and document it in your document. So this is a quick way of accessing the security here. And now we are going to add, you can see that authenticate user. When you say authenticate user, it doesn't mean that anyone logged into your domain. Instead, it means that whoever is logged in under the organization unit and the user object inside the unit that received the policy 37. Okay, so if you log in as CS-N24, you are not going to receive this. You are not this authenticated user, and you will not be applied with this policy. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to add a user called U37-1. So the U37-1 in here, you can see that you can read it. You have to be able to read it. And then in the apply group policy, we're going to say deny. Okay. So once you read and then you denied it, okay, that means once you log in the CS-N30 as the U37-1, then you will not receive this policy. And it's giving you a warning. Okay. It wins everything. So even though you're going to receive it, but you see it dedicated to that, it's a custom. This one will be denied. Okay. So once we do that, let's test it out. We go into here, and currently it's CS, 37-1. So we test it out again. The run still be rejected, and the show run as different users is. Let's take a look at it out now. In the Windows, admin tools, I clicked more, and you can see run different users still there. That's our policy, right? It still receive the policy. Now, we already changed the policy filtering and say, hey, U37-1, you will be denied, but it haven't been applied from the domain to this workstation yet. So we're just speeding it up by using a GP update /force. So that you receive that. And once you receive the update, then you try to run, then of course you can run now because you will not be applied We tell them to filter you out. You don't receive it. So when you don't receive it, then the run as different user is not going to be there either, because by default, it's been disabled. So you go to more, it's gone. So that verifies our idea that, the user, once you got filtered out, then you will not receive the policy. However, if you log in as the U37-2, then it will be still there because the filter doesn't apply to the U37-2. It only applies to the U37-1. So just a side note on that, that means, hey, this method, you can actually apply the setting to affect certain specific users. I said temporarily, I don't want this user to receive this. You can quickly, without changing any policy, but just go into the delegation advance and look at the security, and then just filter the user out, say deny. So that user will temporarily not receiving this policy. And it's not going to affect all the other users inside your OU. So this is a more preferred way of managing your policy on a daily, regular basis. And of course, the other way is to, as our exercise mentioned, is to actually undo everything from that. So now we are going to remove the U37 from the step above and make sure that it doesn't filter out anymore, because we're going to use the same test for that. So go to advanced here, and we're going to remove that. So remove the user. Okay. So now let's go back to the original stage. Now again, just to be safe, before we do anything else, we going back here to make sure that we do a GP update force, so that now the U37-1 will receive the policy. So we just negate whatever we did on the filtering. So once that's done, right click and you do run, it's going to be rejected now. And then of course it will show the run as different user now. So let's take a look at that. It should be there. So just verify it. Under the window administrative tools, click that, right click, more, and you see run a different users there. That means the U37 now is again, because it's not being filtered out anymore, so it's receiving the policy from the OU37. All right. So now we are going to go to the method 2 to undo that. So we will do that because it's continuing on with the exercise. We'll make it more predictable, that we don't have anything left over for the settings. So we are going to go here, and we are going to go to this one, because this is where we enable and disable it, right? So what we are going to do is we are going to say not configured, so that it's like before. And we're going to go here, and then we say not configured. So it's exactly like it was before. So now we're going back here to verify it. Another GP update, force it so that it will go back to the original stage, which is that you can run, and run as different user if not there. That's the default. So right click here, and when you try to do run, yes, you can run it. And then of course, when you want to run different user, then it's no longer as a default. So in here, let's look at the admin tools, right click on that and look at more, it's gone, okay? So verify that we already complete our option 2 to negate what we did by unchecking it to not configured. So this is that. And this time, the U37-2, U37-1, everybody will be affected by all the authenticated user, because we changed the whole policy in there. Now, so when we discuss the differences between that, in the short answer will be the filtering affects only the user being filtered out. You can either as a user or as a group. And you can also, when you do undo setting, it affects everyone receiving the policy in there. Okay. So let's take a look at the, so this is the conclusion. we configure and deploy the policy settings, and we discuss the meaning of how do we enable and what is the meaning of enable, disable, or not configure. Enable means I want that statement to happen. Disable means I do not want that statement to happen. And not configure means I don't care what you do. Whatever you do is fine with me. And we can update the GP deployment to the authenticated users through the GP update to test the settings. And we also modify the policy with either number one, the filtering, or undo the OU policy setting and test it out accordingly. Now we're going to move on to the part number 3, which is the how about what if it's in conflict? The top OU and the lower level OU, we know it's about delegation, but how about if they have different settings? And how about block inheritance? What is enforced and when the policy has conflict? So this is what we will do using the exercise to illustrate that. The first part is going to delegate the CS-N24 to be able to modify the policy 37. And then the administrator is going to use the upper OU, which is the CS-N24 OU, to have conflict settings. So we're going to move this to the side. And we're going to go to the DC here. So first, we wanted to delegate the policy 37 to the user CS-N24. And you can see that CS-N24 is not here in the delegations. So what we want to do is we wanted to add it. So we click add and CS-N24. And you can check name or not. And then make sure that we actually give them all the rights so it can modify and change this policy. So you can see that N24 now it has the rights to do the management now for this policy 37. So that is detailed in page number 5. Okay. Now we're going to go to page 6 to start to exercise the policy conflict and illustrate a few concepts. So we already log in as the administrator on this DC, and we're going to configure the policy 24 now. So, and this one, as you can see, this is actually for policy 37. So we're going to reduce it. And we are going to go to the policy N24 here. So in the N24, and we're going to edit it. So in here, we are going to do the same thing. We are going to, again, to enable both of the settings that we just did before. So go to the policy, and we remember this is the upper OU. This is N24, which is above the OU 37. And then we look at the administrators, and we go to the start menu again, come in here, and then on the settings, we're going to look at the remove run. And remove run. Okay, remove run from that. And we're going to enable just like what we did before. And say okay. And then of course, there's a show run as different user. And we're going to say enable, just like what we did with the OU37 before. And now when we do that, click on the state and then go to the top. Then you will see that, hey, show run and remove run has been enabled, just like what we did before. And this is for this particular icon in here. And this is for the 37. This is for 24. Okay, once we do that, we want to verify that on this workstation, which we log in as CS, the U37-1. And then we're going to just GP update again. So it's going to receive that policy. So therefore, it's not going to be able to run again. You get an error. And then, of course, we say, hey, we want to have a run as. So this time, when you take a look at it, you are going to see you can run as. Look at the window administration tools, right click, and then look more. So yeah, it's available. So yeah, we received the policy from the top level OU, the OU, the CS-N24 OU policy. If they've been applied down the way to the user U37-1. So that is on step number 3. So we did see the run has been removed. So we did see the run has been removed and then show running as is available. And now we are going to modify that. While we're logging on the workstation as U37-1, we can run the GPMC as the CIS N24 users with the rights that we can modify the lower OU policy 37 and check the disable box of remove run and leave that one alone. So what we will do is we'll do this. We'll reduce this one and then we'll highlight here. And because it has the policy of being able to run different users, it becomes convenience for us, right? So we take a look at the group policy management, right-clicked, and then more, we can actually run as different user. So now here, we're going to run as CISN24. And CISN24, which is the user we delegated the control for it to be able to modify the policy of the U37 OU, which is in here. Let's take a look at the group policy object, right? And this policy 37, we dedicated control to the CISN24 user already. So what we want to do is we're going to edit it. And then so what we're going to do is we're going to change the policy here. Look at the user policy and under the administrative policy and the start menu in here. What we want to do is on step number 4, we say, hey, we wanted to disable the remove run. So we have a remove run in here. And so remove run. Now we can click on the settings so it's easier for us to find remove run, yeah, remove run in here. So remove run this time, we're going to check disable because the top all users enable. They want that to happen. So they remove my run. So that's the user cannot run. But I want to disable it, meaning that I do not want that to happen. That means I do not want to remove run. Therefore, I can run, right? So we just change one setting and we're going to say, okay on that. So we're going to leave this running in here. And then we're going to run a GP update. Before we run that, just one more time, you can see that, hey, because output OU is still in effect, it's been enabled to remove run, so you cannot run it. But this time in our lower OU, we already changed that, say, hey, I want to disable that. That means I want my run back. So once this OU has been upper low OU, take your run off and the lower OU put it back. And we'll see that you are able to run now. Okay, so here, let's pause a little and then let's talk about that. Is that why is the lower OU policy 37 setting overriding the policy CISN24? The reason is the upper OU, it doesn't enforce its policy. So it's all about delegations. So that, hey, in general, the top OU say, I don't want you to be able to run. However, the lower OU, you may have your specific reason you want it to happen. You want to be able to run, so you can disable it. And you can enjoy it until I say, hey, I enforce my policy, okay? So we're going to continue on with this exercise. Now we are going to further, we can reduce this one. And in here, we're going to say we want to block the inheritance. So you can take a look at this one. So this one, we just reduce it and it's in here. And then we are going to see in the top OU here. In this organization unit, right-clicked, and then, oh, sorry, we are going to look at the OU37. So in the organization unit where we want to block the inheritance, right-click and say, hey, I want to block inheritance. So you can see then exclamation here. That means whatever you have on the top OU, I don't want to receive anything from you. So after we do that, we actually block everything from the top OU. So therefore, if we enforce it to receive the policy again now, we say, hey, I don't want to have anything to do with the CSN 24 policy. So when you do that, then after it's been refreshed, not only you can run, but also remember by default, the show run as different user is not there. So if we don't receive the policy, the show run as different user is no longer going to be there. So that we further actually disable receiving those policy settings from the top OU. And in here, so let's take a look at this, and we can say, hey, now, since we already do that, and then question again after we do this and say, why can the lower OU dedicated user CSN 24, it can go further, and it blocked all the upper layer OU, the policy CSN 24 set by the administrators. Well, the reason is, again, delegation and delegation, because you may want to further delegate it so that they enjoy, that they don't want to receive any blanket settings on the upper OU or on the domain controller. And so again, this an extreme delegations on that. And number 6, we are going to skip it because we can actually, administrator will log on to the DC and you block the inheritance for the policy. But because policy CSN 24 is on top, upper OU. So when they block the domain policy, which we are not changing anything, so it will have no effect. So to save some time, I'm just not showing this. Now we're going to go to 7, and now we are going to say enforce. So the lower OU enjoy all the delegations with their specific settings until we enforce it. And now we are going to show how to enforce it. Okay. So this time, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the policy. We have to do an F5 to refresh to see that, yes, we did do an block the inheritance in here. So if you take a look at this OU, remember, we have blocked the inheritance. So I'm on the server now. So we did that in here. And then when you want to look at it from different server, you have to do a refreshment F5. So now here we are going to do upper OU here. And this upper OU, we are going to say enforce it. I mean, enforce. So you can see that there's a lock here called enforce. If you see that lock is off, you put the enforce, you can see the lock is here. So now it has been enforced. Now we go back in here. Now, once it's been enforced, then this particular user have no choice. You're no longer going to enjoy the delegations. You are going to just receive whatever's on the top OU. So in this case, in this top OU here, then you cannot run anymore. And then you will receive another top OU setting in your window admin tool. If you do anything to more, you'll be able to see the run as different users because even though you have different settings, but the top level OU say enforce, then you receive whatever the top level OU. But if the top level OU didn't do anything, then you still got to enjoy your customization of your particular policy setting that you wanted to customize it for your use. So so the next step is that we're going to skip that is the CSN 24. It will then go ahead and enforce the policy 37, which is enforcing policy 37 to go down to the lower OU, which we don't have anything created there. So of course it will have no effect. Now we're going to go number 9 to uncheck the enforce of that. So in here, while we are on it, in this policy, right-clicked and we take the enforce off. So that means, hey, I don't want to enforce it anymore. So if you don't enforce it, then the lower OU is going to take over the control, which we can just check it one more time in here. And so that when you block the inheritance now, of course, then you blocked it all, and you would have both of the run that's available, okay? And then you will not able to see the run as different users, because by default, it's not enabled, it's disabled. So you go to the more, you don't see it anymore. So that concludes all of our hands-on in here. And let's take a look at the conclusion here. So now the conclusion on this particular subpart of the exercise, we learn how to delegate the policy 37, the group policy modification rights to the user CS N24. And then from the domain controller, we log in as administrators to configure the group policy of CS N24, which will affect all the users under the OU CS N24. And then the lower OU policy 37, it will enjoy overriding and block the inheritance to customize whatever the Windows setting for the users inside the OU 37 or below, until the upper OU or the domain policy, if it's in the domain policy, and they enforce the policy. And of course, when you enforce the upper layer policy, when the policy itself is not configured on the setting, then of course, you will leave the settings to the lower OU to customize the environment still, yes. And then the last point is the GPE deployment and implementation is actually based again on delegation, and it makes it more flexible and efficient. That's the end of this topic.